And it is that time. It's that time, everybody. Welcome. Welcome. Come on in. Come on in. Have a seat. Grab your coffee, your hot cocoa. Or if it's warm, maybe you want to grab your tea, lemon water, or whatever it is that you enjoy on March 8th, 2022. Welcome again to another edition of Maryland's Cafe Society Radio right here on the YouTube channel. How have you been? I know we missed last week, but it's been kind of hectic for me since the month of March ushered in. Of course, it's Women's History Month. Today happens to be International Women's Day. And so later on in the show, we'll definitely be spotlighting a couple women, some who made history, some who are currently making history. And so I'm excited to bring that to you today. And of course, we'll look at some business news, the stock market, and so much more. So again, welcome aboard. How has your week been? How's the month of March been for you so far? Listen, this weather, as it is every year during the transition from winter to spring, we've experienced it all. On Saturday, we had a lovely 70-degree day. And then, of course, Monday, we dipped back to around freezing along with a little bit of snow, but not too much. We're used to it, right? All right. Well, other than that, I'm good. I've just been taking care of business on top of work and family matters and celebrations and remembrances and all of that good stuff. Just another day in the office, as they say. All right. So are you ready for the coronavirus update? Here it is. According to Johns Hopkins, the number of COVID-19 cases globally is now just under 484.4 million. And the global death toll for COVID-19 has passed 6 million. That happened on yesterday. So, just a lot of lives lost during this pandemic. Here in the United States, the report is we have hit about 79.3 million COVID-19 cases and are hovering around 960.7 thousand lives lost. I hope we don't hit the million mark, but so far they haven't said we are over it. So, we just have to wait and see what happens. And we'll talk a little bit more about it a bit later on in the show. Now, because of all the conflict that's happening in Ukraine, I decided to take a look at their COVID numbers. And so far, they've reported about 5 million cases, and they have lost about 112.5 thousand lives over in the Ukraine due to COVID-19. As for China, well, they're now reporting 608.3 thousand COVID-19 cases, and deaths are now at 7,214, which, they're approaching double the number that they held to for so long, right around 4,000 deaths, which was, a good thing for them. Considering the number of people that live in China. But right now it's 7,214. And they're thinking that it may have something to do with, all of the travel and all of the movement because of the Winter Olympics that took place. So, but anyway, just as an aside, did you know that this coming Friday, will mark the 2-year mark that the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic? And so, we're 2 years in, and let's just all continue to be safe and, continue to protect yourself. Do what's comfortable for you. All right. All right. And so, looking at some top news stories and business news, more sanctions against Russia have been implemented by the United States. In fact, earlier this afternoon, which is why the show is a bit delayed, President Biden went on TV to announce a ban on Russian oil imports in an effort to inflict further pain on Putin for attacking Ukraine. Now, one of the problems with this is the negative financial impact that it's having on Americans. Because of the price of gas for their vehicles and to heat their homes and businesses and so forth, which has already been skyrocketing because of the announcement, a few weeks ago that this may happen. Also, keep in mind that the United States only depends on Russia for about 8% of its petroleum product imports, which kind of begs the question, what's really been going on with these increases? And, again, maybe it's just on the mere speculation that this may happen, 2, 3 weeks ago. But we've been kind of experiencing the uptick in gas prices for a while now, and yet we only depend on 8% of Russia's petroleum products. So it's a little bit confusing for some people. But anyway, experts are saying that Russia would feel even more pain if an European embargo was to happen. And so far, there's been some talks, but nothing has happened along those lines. And so we'll see what happens. But meanwhile, the people of Ukraine are experiencing the worst humanitarian crises in the country's history. In fact, there are now more than 2 million refugees, who have fled the country. And also, sadly, some Ukrainians are finding out that their Russian relatives don't even believe or know that a war is going on, and that's all due to the way that they control the media in Russia. And so, people are being fed what the government wants them to believe. So sad. But listen, yesterday the Ukrainian president repeated his call for NATO to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine to slow the Russian bombardment. But many of the experts are saying it may not happen. And here's why. The problem is that the United States and NATO, they don't want to enforce the no-fly zones because the military would have to get involved. And if Russian planes were to enter the banned airspace, then, the United States and NATO and other Western forces would be forced to respond, which would put them directly in the middle of this conflict with Russia, which could, bring on World War III, which is something that no one really wants to happen. In fact, the Secretary of State here in the United States recently said in an interview, quote, "What we're trying to do is to end the war in Ukraine, not start a larger one." And so, just stay tuned, everybody. We just have to continue to pray for the world leaders and specifically Russia, and hope that the right thing is done, and that is to cease fire and stop the conflict, and sit down at the table and try to reestablish some type of happy medium where all parties involved will be happy. Now, speaking of quotes, here's another quote that many people are talking about, those in media, those on social media, and that is this one. Corporate statements do very little to change outcomes or minds. Now, I was on a Zoom call earlier today, and just in general conversation over the last couple of weeks or so, since the start of the new year, about this whole um, appeal that many corporations, or promises that many corporations made back in May, June, July of 2020 in an effort to increase diversity and inclusion and equity and business and in the work environment. And sadly, that scorecard is not looking pretty good for a lot of those corporations. But this quote that I just read to you came from Disney CEO Bob Chapek, who also had a meeting with his employees to announce that the company would not be taking a formal stance on Florida's pending, or actually, I think it went through, but the Don't Say Gay bill. And this bill, of course, would ban discussing sexual orientation or gender identity in classrooms. But at the same time, he did tell Disney employees and his leadership team that they are unequivocally supportive of the LGBTQ plus community, and just argued that what he meant by that statement was that there would be other ways that the company and other corporations could bring about change. And so, just making the statement and then not backing it up are two different things. And so we'll watch it and see what happens. But it's a big issue. There's so many big issues going on in the world right now, and specifically here in the United States with things, the voting rights issue, the abortion issue, women's right, equal pay. I mean, there are so many serious issues on the table right now that are being addressed or summoned to back up for discussion. And so we'll watch them all. We'll see what happens, and as it relates to the promises from corporations regarding DEI. Folks are just going to be on the lookout. Now, some people are saying that putting people in higher positions, putting one person in a high position is not enough. What's going on the ground floor, what's going on in lower management and lower positions. Is the DEI there as well? And so folks are watching, and there's already a list out there. I'm not going to address it yet, but there's already sort of a report card out there on how some of these corporations are doing since they made those promises back in the summer of 2020. We'll discuss it on a later show. But not really shifting the conversation, but just kind of talking about this. Now, you remember the Coke versus Pepsi. Do you like Coke? Do you like Pepsi? Well, there's a new one out now, and that one is related to business and investment and all of that. And that is, do you prefer Zelle or Venmo? And the winner is, drum roll, please. The winner is Zelle. Yes, customers spent 400, or I should say sent $490 billion through Zelle in 2021 compared to $230 billion through Venmo. Now, that's good news for Zelle, right? It seems like folks are preferring Zelle. However, according to Javelin Strategy and Research, which is an industry consultant, they're saying whatever payment app you prefer to use, be sure to be on the lookout for fraud, because about 18 million Americans were defrauded via apps and payments in the year 2020. So, good news for Zelle. Not so good news for Venmo, although that $230 billion is nothing to sneeze at. But nevertheless, all who use these apps need to be careful. Okay. And I just had to take a look at this because this is somewhat important. Forgive me for not being professional. Okay, now let's take a look at the stock market, everyone. And this is as of about 2 o'clock Eastern time. The Dow is up 0.62% to 33,000, just over 33,000 points. The S&P 500 up 0.48% to 4,218 points, and the Nasdaq up 86%, 0.86% to 13,435 points. Gold is performing well at $40.89 per ounce, bringing them up to about $2,039.83 per ounce. Oil also rose $3.95 to 124.35 per barrel. And no one's surprised about that one. All right. So in other news, real quick, just headlines. Rumor has it that Visa and MasterCard are planning to hike merchant fees next month. Something that small businesses definitely did not want to happen. Also, H&M USA has extended its partnership with nonprofit Buy from a Black Woman for another year. They are one of the ones who are doing fairly well on their pledge to, make sure that DEI is in place in their business. And then one other news story that I wanted to bring to your attention was this, and we talked about it at the top of the hour when we were doing looking at the COVID numbers. We're all attempting to return to pre-COVID life, right? But the big question is, how will work life work? And last Tuesday, President Biden gave his State of the Union address, and he said, in quotes, "It's time for Americans to get back to work and fill our great downtowns again." And so he, like so many others, want to go back to days of old when, the streets were full of people, restaurants packed, everyone's at work. But several economists are saying that that may not happen. And just backing up a bit, in the last few days, there have been several tech giants who announced that they would be reopening their offices. Twitter is opening its offices and resuming their business travel. As of March 15th, Google said that employees can head back to work to some of their locations, at least, and specifically the Bay Area headquarters starting April 4th. And Apple told workers to return to the office 1 day per week beginning April 11th and will increase to 2 times per week 3 weeks later. American Express, Meta, and Microsoft are among the companies that already introduced back to the office plans. That happened last month. But again, economists are saying that the hopes for the full offices and bustling business districts are unrealistic. They believe that 3/4 of the increase in work from home during COVID will continue past the pandemic stage of the disease, and that the number of fully remote workers will double compared to before the pandemic. Now, many employees who do return to offices won't be required to work in person for the entire week, as we've just given you an example of that. And so, the world has changed, and we know that work from home has been going on for a long time prior to COVID, but COVID kind of solidified the deal, and yeah, it sort of just accelerated the whole work from home concept. And many of these businesses have poured lots of money into perfecting work from home, and how that would look in terms of managing people who work from home. And so I think with that investment that they've made, that they will keep that option out there. In fact, the experts are saying that companies that don't offer flexible work options could be at a disadvantage for hiring new employees and maybe even returning the ones that they have in this tight job market. In fact, according to a recent Pew survey, 60% of United States workers with jobs that can be done from home say that they would prefer to work from home all or most of the time. And so there you have it. Now, there are those people who just love to be out in the world doing what they do, especially if their work is physical and they just like the movement and being physical. But if it's something that they can do from home, many are saying that's what they prefer. And of course, we know that those people with families, with children, have kind of figured out that they can kind of manage life better by working from home. They figured out, the managing the kids when they have remote learning situations with the school. And so, again, on all levels, they've kind of mastered the concept of working from home and managing families, and so that's what folks are opting for. But again, as we always do here at the show, we'll continue to follow it and see how things further develop. All right, and so I have one last thing before we wrap up today's show, and that is, of course, a spotlight for Women's History Month. And so on this edition of the show, we're celebrating Pamela Culpepper. My light went out again. And Anna Maria Rugarli. And the reason that we're celebrating them is because they recently made history at Prada. Yeah, Prada recently appointed 3 new independent non-executive directors, 2 of which are Pamela and Anna. And of course, this move also marks the first time in the company's century-old history to ever have a Black woman on the board. Now, both new board members were selected. Actually, there were 3 of them. One was a man, but we're highlighting the women. And so the 2 women were selected for their backgrounds in environmental, social, and governance to support the board of directors and its sustainability assessments and decisions in regards to the 3 courses of action at the basis of the company's ESG strategy, which is people, environment, and culture. And so congratulations to them. Now, of course, there are those who are being a little bit critical and saying, well, what is this whole concept of independent non-executive directors? Is it sort of a trial run, a test run to see if they can actually become executive directors? Whatever it is, I say again, congratulations to the women, and we're certainly proud of you and your works. All right, and then the last 2 women that I'd like to spotlight, I've spotlighted them here on the show in the past, especially when I was on the radio, but this spotlight is from a different perspective. I thought this was so interesting when I happened upon this little known fact about these 2 women. Now, although her aviation career lasted just 17 years, Amelia Earhart remains one of the most famous people ever to take to the sky. In addition to being renowned for her many firsts, including being the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic and the first person to fly alone from Hawaii to the mainland USA. She's known for her 1937 disappearance and the many theories behind it, but she's less well known for this. Listen to this, and it's a more fun thing to imagine. Amelia Earhart took Eleanor Roosevelt on a nighttime joyride in an airplane from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore on April 20th back in 1933. Only a few people know about this, I guess, and maybe the folks that they share the story with and the folks who attended this White House dinner party, and which sort of sparked this excursion. But yeah, the brief flight took place with the both of them in the evening attire because they were at a White House dinner party. And of course, it was, talked about in the media back then. And the fact that Eleanor Roosevelt had recently received a student pilot license at the time made the news as well. And so those who joined them, it wasn't just the two of them, but Eleanor Roosevelt's brother ditched the dinner party in favor of that flight that night, as did Thomas Wardwell Doe, the president of Eastern Air Transport at the time, and Eugene Luther Vidal, who was head of the Bureau of Air Commerce, and his wife Nina Gore, and they were both parents of the author Gore Vidal. Anyway, when the plane returned after their short journey from Washington, D.C. to Baltimore, they arrived back to the White House just in time for dessert. Yes, they did. So, anyway, they all had quite the story to tell at all of their next dinner parties for years to come. And Roosevelt and Earhart remained good friends for the rest of their lives, well, until the first one, Amelia, passed first, and then obviously Eleanor. But they, of course, shared interests, common interests that had to do with women's causes and world peace, and of course, yes, flying airplanes. So I thought that was nice, a nice little story to share with you all. A little known fact, unless you were around in the 1933, 34 years when, it was big news in the media. All right, all right, all right. So let's go ahead and take a look at our new word for this month, March 2022. And remember, we're repeating last year. So the word that we're revisiting is paladin. Paladin. And that means an advocate, a defender, or hero of a noble cause, or for a noble cause. All right. So make sure that you are a paladin this month and throughout the year. Okay, remember everyone, if you have a business, a product, a service, a book, a movie, whatever you may have, and you want to get some additional exposure, you can certainly do so through the show, on my website, and other ways. Just send an email to producer@marilynscafesociety.com for all the details. Remember to visit that website too, marilynscafesociety.com. There you can connect with me on social media. You can also click on the blog tab to get the latest blog information, which is usually up by every Wednesday, Thursday of the week. And again, shout out to everyone who checks this video out via YouTube. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Remember the email club as well, Marilyn's Cafe Society at yahoo.com. Just shoot your email to me and say, add me to the email club, and it's done just like that. All right, so you ready for what love is? As we close out the show, well, here it is. Love is this coming Saturday night when we all lose 1 hour of sleep for a very good reason, and that is daylight savings time. Yes, it begins. We spring ahead, everybody, and so that means we'll get an extra hour of daylight in the evenings. Isn't that nice? All right, I think around here it's, about 5:45, 5:50 when it gets dark. So that means it'll be closer to 7 o'clock after this coming Saturday. I love it. I love it. Because it also means that we're going to be experiencing warmer temps. And then, the grass will get green again. The leaves will start to grow, and, things will look very, very springy and hopeful. All right. I think that's it. That's all I got. So remember, for the rest of this week, if you don't do anything else, be sure that you live, you laugh, and you love everybody. Let's keep this conflict with Russia and Ukraine in our thoughts and prayers. Again, praying for the leaders and hopes that this all will cease speedily. Godspeed, that it will be over. All right. Um, as always, it's a pleasure and a privilege. I'll see you on the next show. And remember to check out the blog in the middle of the week. I'll try to do some shorts. I know during last week's short, I said I would try to do some more. I just, this isn't the only thing I do. Boy, I wish it was. But this isn't the only thing I do in terms of work. So I'm trying to do as much as I can because this is what I enjoy doing. So anyway, the blog coming up no later than Thursday of this week, and perhaps a few shorts, but I'll definitely see you on the next show next Tuesday. Peace, everybody.